Okay, let's take a look at the MVPS layout that just dropped recently. I'm sorry I didn't get to it before this last weekend. I've been super busy with work, but here we are. So as always, the first thing we do is we draw zones, and these zones look pretty cut and dry, I would say. So this looks to be Arizona, Oklahoma, Texas, Nevada, Iowa, or as an alternative, you could do Dragon and Charger. I don't think there's anything too crazy about it. It is a very straight field, which is interesting. So, and there's a ton of movement that can be done here in these middle areas. So right here and here, in the center of the field. I'm sorry for, I don't know why the grid is like grayed out or whatever. That's kind of odd. So let's take a look then at the back line like we normally do and see what sort of gaps exist. Again, you guys already know this if you've played the layout, so I apologize. I just need to get up to speed real quick. So first things first, huge gap right here, which is pretty typical from a back center. And then as we run out to the corner, same shot, right, but back at the home. As we run out to the corner, that shot exists in two different places. So you have this shot here from the back center as well as from here, depending on which angle they're going to shoot you from. And honestly, if they were to drop their stream just on the inside of this, of that pin, they could probably eliminate you before you even get to this mini wedge, or if you're trying to take the wedge in front of it. So be aware of that. And then again, if you're running out to the corner, there's also this shot that exists. But I would say that if you're going to dive into the corner, that's a pretty small gap. And for a lot of teams playing in this tournament, it's going to be a hard shot to make. It is a true tape, kind of. It's an inset back, inset corner from the actual Dorito tape. And then once you get to the Dorito, I guess I don't even know if you'd call this a true Dorito tape, because then you have this outside bunker, this 50 that kind of breaks it up. So interesting that it's just kind of a straight line once you get to that Dorito 2. We'll call it for the purpose of this. And then if we run out to the snake side of the field, again, that same back center shot exists, except now on the snake side. This does take a lot more resources. I'm noticing there's a little bit of an input delay, but that's okay. So their same shot exists. This is an even wider gap. It looks like it's about equal, I would say. About, not quite. Actually, it might be perfectly equal with those pins. They're a little offset from each other. So just be aware of that. This is going to be a hard thing to make, but the advantage is that the routes that you take into the snake will depend on your survivability, right? So if that back center guy is shooting at you, these three intersections are all very different distances from each other, which means that they will have to correct and shoot at those different locations. So if I were a back center player, I would definitely set up targets to shoot that if I needed more reps in. I don't know how common it'll be for somebody to run up the center and dive into this, though I would say it is a possibility. It's just a hard thing, that's a hard bunker to make because you can correct for it easily, right? If I'm shooting, for example, if I'm shooting right here from the back center, and I see somebody who may not be low enough to go underneath here, I'm already correcting my paint by putting it here. So that might not be a viable route, but if the back center is not looking your way, it actually could be. Running to the corner then, again, huge gap from the back center going into the corner, something to be aware of. And then once you get to the corner, it is an outside tape, meaning that we can actually see almost all of the snake as they try to move up because we're further out than they are. Okay, so right away, my first thought is the back center looks like a really solid double up bunker because the lanes are insane, and you can really safely and easily filter up the middle right after that. So I would suspect that good teams will be doubling the home pretty much every point. And the hard thing is the way that you survive that is you put a lot of guns back to the center, and you usually delay going to your bunkers. So what I would suspect would happen is if you find that a team is doubling up the home, then what you end up doing is you send your number twos just slightly off from the back centers and shooting their paint back at the home. Because usually what happens is these guys' paint is coming out a little bit wider than what you'd expect, right? But that means that the people that are stepping out just barely are going to shoot those guys' hoppers off, right? So that's an option. I'm not saying you should delay on either side. You know, it's usually better to take a risk on one side and then do that delay strat on the other. But it is possible to do, you know, essentially 3 people back center, one playing here, excuse me, your home player playing here, your number 2 floating here, your other number 2 floating here, and then for these guys paint to be back center, and then this guy to be shooting somewhere either side, right? That's totally an option as well. But my initial reaction is probably that, especially, and I'm gonna say it's probably gonna favor the snake side. The trick is gonna be that if the back center picks up on that, then all they have to do, even if they double up the home, is to have one gun shooting up the center on the snake side to essentially ruin that strat. But if that starts happening, then you just kick out immediately, right? Your next play, for example, if they shot back at you and the back center and you died, the next play would be to just run out to your primary bunker and hope that you get there fast. But what we're really trying to do is make sure that we have 3 guns up as much as possible, if not 4. So given that it's a double up back center, it's very possible to have 4 guns up. And what you would do is that delay strat and then have somebody running and gunning to the corner with their gun up as well, depending on what the route, what the safest route is, right? We've talked about this at length in other videos, so I'm not going to spend time here. But as you know, if you took this route right away, you survived. You took this route, you survived. Maybe you did that for 3 points in a row. The chances are the paint's going to be here, which means that corner route is a lot safer. So on your 4th point or 5th point or whatever, depending on how long the series is going, you could very easily send your number 1 to the corner with his gun heads up down, you know, down towards the back center, and their survivability is going to be pretty good. So okay, interesting. Let's look at the middle routes really quick, and then we'll look at the Dorito, and we'll look at the snake, and we'll be done. So again, shooting heads up towards the Dorito side of the field, really safe, really straightforward. You are blinded from the back center, so you can run and gun as you do so, which is a very, very solid strat, I would say. And it looks to be that the Dorito side is safer to do so than on the snake. Well, it's actually the same. They're both centered on that line. So again, your mileage might vary depending on how the layout is set up at the tournament or how you practiced it, you know, at your local field. So be aware of that. It very well may be that the back center is off a little bit from the home, or from the center 50 bunker. So, but both options are viable, which means that if you decided to double up the back center, you could have one guy actually staying here and the other guy running and gunning as he does so. And I think that's probably a better strat than for both people to stay here, though that's also possible. But if you guys remember, even in the last event at World Cup 2022, holy cow, we're in 2023. You'll remember that was a lot of the plays that people were making, was they were double stacking the home, and then they were sending one person filtering up the middle, looking one way or the other. And I would suspect that that's how this you know, layout plays as well. So okay, moving up to the 50, then looking towards the Dorito side, that pin blocks quite a bit. You do have a solid gap to see the home, or see the corner, excuse me, but you cannot, unless you do a little bit of move. Well, you could probably at the field, but if you wanted to see that corner, that Dorito corner, move into the baby Dorito, or we'll call it the Dorito 1, you'd have to be pretty tall and be able to shoot downward. Again, depending on how the layout's set up at the actual tournament. So that move appears to be pretty protected from the 50, which is good. However, the next move is brutal. So this next move from the Dorito 1 to that Dorito 2, we'll call it, is going to be really tough to survive. Interesting, though, that if... I don't think that's actually a route, but this move is completely protected from the 50. If you decided to surprise somebody, or you needed to dig them out of the middle and you were the only guy on the Dorito side and your other dude was kind of trapped here towards the back center. So let's say you lost Tiger 1 off the Dorito side, but you're the widest person alive. This is an option. Not saying that you should do that, but it is a possibility to surprise the 50 guy because that move is completely protected. Otherwise, this 50 has a really solid eye on every single move on the Dorito side. So I would suspect this 50 is played a decent amount. And even if you decided to get tricky, I wouldn't probably play this bunker. But if you decided to get a little sneaky, assuming you could get really small and not be shot by the Snake 1 right there, you could even surprise, you know, get a different angle, which now this angle is even stronger because that baby Dorito can't even wrap to see you before they have to commit to this move. So that's a pretty solid move. The worst part about this is that it makes you more susceptible by being run down, right? If you have a guy mirrored up with you, and then you decide to make this move up to the mini W, that guy's coming to run you down. Let's look at the snake side really quick. Same sort of heads up gaps, right? As you run up, you can shoot the number 2 or the number 1, depending on where you decide to put your paint. In here, you can hold the gap forever if you had enough paint to do it and you don't get run down. So that's interesting. Also, the corner, if you take that corner and there's a guy in the 50 looking your way, that'll be a very difficult bunker to get out of, because this little cake is a much more difficult bunker to fight from than this 50 is. So be aware of that. As far as, you know, the moves after that, this first move is unprotected, so this is really tough to make. So this 50 is, again, really strong to be looking on the snake side as well as the Dorito side. But once you make it past this first snake 1 gap, it looks like everything else is smooth sailing. And at that point, your survivability in the 50 is really just dependent on how far back into the bunker you go. But you're still pretty protected, right? It's always possible to get shot in the pack, but that's why I always tell people, when you're playing 50s, play into the bunker still. Like, there's a lot of people who play in the 50s, and they'll be all the way back here. And it's like, dude, people in the Snake 1 can see you if you play all the way back here. So, anyway, if we take that same sort of mini W move up, pretty much the same gaps and angles that we had on the Dorito side. But what I'm noticing now is this interesting cross shot. So this is another interesting gap that you could surprise people with. The trick is, this is a really, really small gap, which means that if you wanted to stop anybody from getting into that baby Dorito, you would have to be shooting all the time, which essentially just reveals your position. But camera's battery died because it wasn't plugged in. But what I was saying is, if you decide to hold them at that baby Dorito and set up a trap, this is actually a really solid angle to do it from, especially if no one in the middle saw you make this move. It also protects you from kind of that obvious heads up run through. So if you were watching the Dorito way the whole time and they knew that, okay, turns out we're not going to use a camera. Oh, well. So what I was saying is, if you decided to look Dorito way from the 50 and your mirror knew that, then it's possible to head check this really quick and make this move here, which you might be able to bait out that 50 run through if he decides to come on the Dorito side of that run through. So, and I think the opposite is true. If we look snake way, we have this gap does exist. It's not great, but it is there. So if Snake 1 decides to look up the middle, then you could surprise them with this angle. But I would say this is a much harder shot. Not a harder shot, but this is a much riskier move, because if you don't kill them there, you have to get out of here. Otherwise, you're in trouble. There's only so much hiding you can do from that snake guy, and if he decides to just blast that side of the bunker, you're essentially stuck here having to live behind your gun on the Dorito side. So, okay, that's the middle. Let's look at the snake side really quick. So, coming out to this tall Aztec, heads up shot's pretty solid. Huge gap to try and survive making it out into that snake. So this heads up fight's going to be really strong. And I would suspect that a lot of the fighting into the snake is going to come from the number 1s mirroring up here. And the trick is going to be that if one of the number 1s actually makes it out to the corner, not to say that that's a good move, and the other one stops here, well, really, we decided that the response is to just summon somebody up to the middle, because that's a really, really difficult bunker to get out of into the snake after the fact, right? So I don't even know if the corner's really worth it unless you wanted to leapfrog somebody into it. So, for example, if you ran to the corner, you survived, and then the number 2 that was behind you delayed and then maybe took this route, or really any kind of route that you can think of, you might be able to survive that, because now you've got, I mean, unfortunately the 50 can see this still. This isn't foolproof, but even if all you did was had, you know, your number 1 go here and your number 2 go here, and they were still stuck in this positioning, excuse me, they were still stuck, yeah, they were still stuck here. Well, now you've got superior wide positioning than they do on the snake side, which allows you to wrap and apply a lot more pressure. So anyway, interesting stuff. This inside move is going to be a really solid move, I would imagine. So obviously, if I decide to take a different angle, I can come on the inside. Really, nobody's a threat at this point. There is a cross ball that could come at your way from either of these wedges, it looks like. So just be aware of that. But if the paint's not coming there, I don't think you need to worry. And the trickiest part is that this angle, as I've always said about these wedges, is really bad to gunfight from. And if that person that's heads up with you stays in the Aztec, you're putting yourself in a worse position because of this. So just be aware of that. It's possible, however, that you could come here and maybe surprise the guy that's in front of you. So let's say your gun drops and you make this move quickly. You might be able to either dump some paint here and get the timing such that the guy runs right through your paint as he tries to take the snake, or you might be able to just surprise them with this low shot and shoot their hopper directly, shoot them, whatever. So that is an option, but the problem is if those don't work, then you've got a gunfight from this angle and it's just so bad. But you are a lot closer to getting into the snake, which is great. So what I will say right off the bat, though, is try as much as you can. I mean, those who've played the field can tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I would suspect that high-level teams are not doing this. This is generally not good because one person can contain both of you from the same angle. And certainly there you could say that, well, two guns could overpower the same one, and that is true. However, if you're really trying to force the issue, you really might bait yourself into like a middle trap. So let's say, for example, they sent somebody up the middle looking snake way. Well, even if you win this, and you pressure this guy into oblivion from your two guns, well, you might just send your guy right into a trap right away. And the way that you kind of soft counter that is to just have one person in this angle, making it so they have to take this a bit slower, right? Even if you beat this guy, you know, I got to worry about the middle instead of your guy behind you shouting, hey, go, go, go. You know, I've got the guy, go, go, go. Because then you just might bait yourself into that snake push. Into the corner then, let's look at the angles a little bit more. So obviously you have the heads up, you have a little bit of a drop shot into the snake one, if they're standing tall. I don't know why they would be. And if you wrap wide, you do have a drop shot, and you know, you have a blind shot from the guy, but also from you to this tall Aztec. But you also, again, you have this guy to worry about, but it is a little bit of a different angle. So that's good. If you take the inside route, interesting enough, that middle guy cannot see you immediately, and you can see the home guy, which direction they're looking. So if you decided that there were two in the back center and you see paint going this way and you're pretty sure there's a guy in the middle, then you can use some good process of elimination to say, this guy's probably looking my way. Whereas if you're playing a team that doesn't typically double stack the home and you don't see any paint here, well, now you know there's probably a guy in the middle or we killed him and I don't know which direction he's looking, so I can't really make this move without that information. Or the opposite could be true, that if you know they don't usually go in the middle and they don't double stack the home, then if you see paint coming from the back center, either towards you or on the other side of the field, you know there's nobody in the middle. So as soon as this guy is beaten, you can take that bite right away. Even if there's a guy in the middle, if you're fast, you can make this move, I would say. The only trick is also this guy. This guy could also shoot you. So that's a pretty hard, like I said, that's a pretty hard bunker to get out of. But there are routes to do it. It's just, yeah, that's going to be really hard. The other alternative is take a step back. If there's not a back center, there's nobody mirrored in your corner. Well, that would mean that their widest guy has to be at this tower, which sucks. But if their widest guy's at the tower, you could also take a step off of this bunker, assuming the back center's not looking at you. Use the pin, stand up on your feet, snap at this guy at the 50, and then if he flinches or you kill him, then you take the bite. So also an alternative, kind of a Fedorov move. So it's a bit risky. If we go up to this can here, interesting wrap shots from the home or towards the home and towards the center 50. We're going to just call that the center 50. You do have a really interesting gap that you could hold, an alternative gap to hold right here, which would change things up a little bit, but that's a small enough gap that you'd probably just have to shoot paint, which kind of sucks. And you are very susceptible to the Dorito side. So I think this is more of a stopgap bunker. I would suspect that you could come here, shoot at the 50 to surprise him, and then maybe, you know, come here and get even closer or run them down. But I don't imagine that this bunker is going to be played a lot. Even if you're using it as a bunker to get into the snake, this is just so wide right here that the only way that you could make this move is if there's nobody in the 50. So, I mean, everything's possible. It's paintball. But of all the routes to take going into the snake, this is like so risky because again, that 50 move is very protected and it's hard to scout off the break. So the only way I think you can make this move is if they are not sending somebody off the break right away, or if you think that they're going to be looking the Dorito way mostly, if they do so. That's like the only way you could really even risk that play. So you'll need a lot of information to make that call. Into the snake itself, you obviously have a 50 shot, 50 gun battle. I would not take this if I were you. If I was in the snake, I would not fight that guy. You do have some drop shots on the Doritos, which is nice. And then heads up, you actually don't have anything, which is also really nice. So if you go low, the only person you have to beat, it looks like, yeah, the only person that it looks like you have to beat is if there's a, for whatever reason, a mini wedge on the Dorito side looking your way, or the center 50. So if you get to this bunker right away and head check low, you shouldn't have to worry about anybody in the can because we decided that's kind of a bad bunker. And then you can crawl up to this snake 2 right away. If you didn't see anybody looking your way as you made this move, I would actually hold this for a second and then look on the inside to check off and just see what's going on the Dorito side. If there is somebody in the 50, you might be surprised that you'll actually shoot them in the foot right here. Okay, so let's move on from that. If we move then up to the snake 50 here, it doesn't look like, I think if you go low enough, you're fine. There's always a possibility that some kind of drop shot could come in from here. But that would have to, they'd have to know that you were in this position and they'd have to start pumping paint. But otherwise, I think you're good. Again, coming here, always we evaluate what sort of free kills are available when you make these moves. This can guy is definitely in trouble. He's probably dead, or he has to live behind his gun on the Dorito side. But nothing else besides that, it looks like. You definitely have a cross shot on the 50 Dorito, assuming that's kind of the 50-ish, yeah. Essentially, their 40 Dorito. You do have a cross shot. This is an easy trade, so just be careful. You're obviously a lot more protected than they are in this case, so be aware, but that would probably be the first person I'd check off if you know there's not anybody in the 50. Because if you don't and you stand up like this to shoot that guy, you're going to get shot in the shoulder. Otherwise, after that, I would check off these two people. The wedge on the Dorito side and then the can, excuse me, on the Dorito side. So this tells me then that we need to get to their snake to get some kills. So again, the assumption is always that there's nobody heads up in front of us to see what the kills are. Otherwise, we just have to fight that out. There's a back center, which if they're not looking at us, then this is golden. But if they are looking at us, this is a way that we could get peeled off. So just always be aware that you have other options to check off this person, even to just head check, right? If you already own what's going on in the middle because you've checked it off with your eyes, then you can just take this inside route and surprise this person because you're taking the less obvious angle, right? The obvious angle is to come here and slowly like peek and get shot. The second obvious angle is to come up over the top right here. But the just totally unsurprised or surprising angle would be to come up this way and come up and shoot. So to me, that seems to be a pretty solid option. And then once you get into this part of the snake, it looks like you've got free reign on everybody. Wedge guy could still survive. This guy's gonna have a really hard time living. And then if you keep moving up, you definitely have some free kills here on this Dorito if they're in the 50, which I don't think they would have been by that point, and then so on and so forth. And then it's just simple wrap and go. Okay. Interesting. Even when you get to the 50 snake, you don't have free kills. However, you're in a really good launch position, which is something that I think we're going to start seeing a lot more in layouts. It just seems like rather than as soon as you get to the 50, you've got a bunch of free kills cross field. It looks like a holdout bunker that once you get to applies a lot of pressure to your opponents, and that they either have to spend all of their time containing you or risk just getting the field blown open. But it doesn't look like, I'm not sure how common it'll be this year for 50 bunkers to just reward a bunch of kills, because it doesn't seem to be very hard to get to the 50 anymore in a lot of layouts. Okay, so going to the mini wedge on the Dorito side, nothing really worth cross field. I mean, you do have this, but I would not waste time doing that. You do have a really bad heads up angle. Again, it's even worse than the larger one, and it's double stacked. So essentially a mirror situation as was on the snake side, except now you were dealing with a mini wedge. Then coming out to the can, we already looked at this a little bit, but it is a little offset. So that means that you can low wrap and shoot at anybody who's stopping you, which in this case is going to just be that back center. So if you make it to the corner, you're guaranteed this bunker, almost guaranteed. And it's paintball, I should say almost. you're almost guaranteed this mini Dorito, which is great. An alternative route could be, I mean, you could always just go straight into it, but then you risk having paint coming your way from the back center. But again, if you make it here and you go low, nobody heads up can stop you, and not even anybody in the middle could really stop you except for that back center. So that's really good to know. If you wanted to take this inside route, that is also an option, and it looks pretty safe. Obviously, if anybody's coming up over the top of this back center, or excuse me, of this 50, that's something to be worried about. So for you middle guys that are tall, if you're running up to the middle off the break, I would definitely look up over the top every so often. I wouldn't do it all the time because people become wise to that, but every so often I would actually look up over the top and see if this move is being made or if that move on the snake side is being made, because you can pick those people off really easily. Coming out to the outside of this bunker, then super straightforward heads up battle, holding huge gaps to break out, right? Unsurprisingly. And then if we look at the inside route, you have this weird step off if you wanted to actually do anything to shoot the center 50 or the home. Because otherwise, if you step here and wrap, yeah, that's just super awkward. You could shoot the back center. The center 50 would probably shoot you unless he was looking the other way. And if for whatever reason the corner guy's wrapping hard or looking in the inside, you're kind of in trouble here. This is a possibility though. If you make this, if you hear, for example, if a team is only sending one person center 50 and you hear that he's looking snake way, looking inside here for a second and then taking this bite right away is totally an option. The problem is there's really nowhere for you to go from here unless you kill people on the Dorito side. So I would say that this is a decent number 2 route. Or so, for example, if your number 2 ends up making this move and you still got some number 1 to make a move on the outside, or, you know, you did some kind of leapfrog play where, for example, you sent the number 1 here, they then move up to this Dorito, and this guy goes here, 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 and here, then this is okay because your widest guy is still somewhere on the Dorito tape. But if this guy dies and your number 2's here, this is a really, really tough spot to live in. They essentially have to make this move, and that's a huge gap. That's a huge gap to make. The 50 can look your way and essentially contain you forever. And if they have somebody on the outside of the field, anywhere in these bunkers, again, with somebody somewhere here, you are in trouble because this is going to be a really, really difficult bunker to get out of. So just be aware of that. I would probably say that unless you have Tiger 1 or you just want to make a really crazy play, if you have Tiger 1 on the Dorito side, this is a really great launch move to make. And this guy's obviously trying to work here. Otherwise, it looks to be that a lot of your damage is going to be probably from this positioning, I would suspect. If you decide to wait to actually take that wedge move right here and your snake moves up and goes here, then you can always come to the outside and help wrap, right? So, except that, is that wrap even good? It's not great, so maybe not. You can look in the inside to shoot the 50, but the wrap's not great. Okay, so let's look at the this Dorito here. Any free kills? Nope. You have a surprise shot on the snake 1. You both can surprise each other from a drop shot across field. You obviously have the 50 that if he's looking your way is going to be dangerous. But you have this Aztec cross field, which you could at least just apply pressure. You're not going to kill that guy. And then obviously you have your heads up. If you move to the next bunker, or let's see, who's going to stop you? The big wedge, if he's standing tall, could stop you. But otherwise, if you actually get low and nobody's in your tape, the only people that can stop you is the back center and the center 50 reasonably. I don't think that the tall Aztec on the snake side is going to be looking your way. So if you check off these 2 bunkers, you're free to go. Well, and again, assuming that they didn't go here. So I guess 3 bunkers to worry about, but it's kind of one or the other, right? So if they're in the wedge, you're good to go. If they're not in the wedge and they still have people alive, this is where I'd be worried about that Dorito. But otherwise, if you find they're in the wedge, just get low, look in the inside. Okay, cool, I'm good to go. Now heads up again, wrapping. I have a pretty strong fight now. These angles are really bad for them, and this angle is really good for me. So I'm in a great position to kind of own this. This is a situation where if I was a Dorito player, I would set up a target in lots of different locations, probably at least 3 if you can. 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here maybe. and do the same thing for this one. But whatever the case is, if you can get a lot of really good target practice on this, then you'll know what the snaps are right away. And you don't even have to kill these guys. You just have to win this gunfight and hold this forever, which is going to just make these guys' lives really miserable. So that's good. And then if you win that or kill them, the back center is a sneaky one. The back center can actually hold you out from moving. So I would imagine that this Dorito 3, right? 1, 2, 3. This Dorito 3 to Dorito 50 move is gonna be hard to make unless the back center's not looking your way or they're dead, because that gap is big. If you look on the inside, yeah, if you look at the inside of this bunker, no free kills, but now you'll notice that Snake 50 is a lot scarier, right? Like I was saying earlier, the Snake 50 is a much more protected position than you're in right now. If you were in the 50 or 40 Dorito and they're in this 50 Snake, you'd have to get so low to just survive this. So be careful about their positioning in the Snake. What it looks like is you want to get to this Dorito 2 and chill for a while until you hear what's going on in the Snake. Either you've got a kill or they're not in the 50 and you're holding them, and then you can do that, blind heads up move up to this bunker. And then no free kills on the inside still. If you get to the 50, that tall tower is definitely dead. The corner is dead. This 50 wedge is in trouble. Or excuse me, the snake side wedge is in trouble. And you do have a shot onto the snake too, but you have to hit that shot. If you miss, you have to commit. You have to go. Because you're either going to just get killed from that guy, or you'll have to live behind your gun fighting somebody in this wedge or whatever's going on the Dorito side. So be very careful about that. It looks to be that your primary bunker to get to as soon as possible is this Dorito 2, and then you have to piece together what's going on, and then your second bunker to hold out on is this Dorito 3, and then until you start getting tigers, or you can get tigers by making this move, I'd be very careful to do so. So if you can get kills in the Dorito tape because you made this move, if you can kill the guys that are in front of you, then this is a great bunker to get to. So otherwise, if you get to their Dorito 4, again, same situation, sort of kill, sort of free-ish on the Snake 1. The wedge guy on the Snake is in trouble now, and everybody prior to that was already dead. The back center is even in more trouble, and then as soon as, it's like run through and finish the game sort of positioning. So, okay, I think that's everything. So I guess just to recap really quickly, I would say, again, I haven't played the layout, so take it with a grain of salt. I would say probably don't double stack this bunker, and probably don't double stack this bunker, as in don't put a guy here, and vice versa. You're going to inadvertently trap yourself in essentially the same angle on both sides if you do that. If you're getting a lot of pressure from a double stacked back center, then the best way to fix that is to float out and put pressure back. You can do it either side or both. Probably wouldn't do it both, but you can. Double stacking the back center is really strong, but I would say that having one guy back center shooting off the break and the other guy running up the middle is even stronger. So, and you can certainly do any kind of variation of that. You can do double stack the back center and read and react based on kills. So if you kill somebody here, then you're going to push this side. If you kill somebody here, you're going to push this side and the other person's going to stop. Or you can just hard commit, send somebody up the middle right away. Again, it can be either or, it doesn't matter. As far as routes into the Snake, you have lots of options. We've talked about this, but it looks like going to the corner into the Snake is going to be really tricky. It's going to be super hard to survive, and taking this inside route is very, very dangerous if anybody's looking your way from the back center. If nobody's looking your way from the back center, this is not a bad route at all. The run and gun to the Dorito corner is very strong, so in my opinion, that's a really good go-to move to make. I would be looking for that a lot. And then as far as getting into the Dorito, it's kind of the same sort of scenario. It looks to be that there's a lot of similar moves into the Dorito as there were in the Snake. It looks to be that you're going to do kind of like a 2-column push on the Dorito side, where your number 1 is on the outside and your number 2 is on the inside. And just be aware that if you go here as the Dorito 2 and your guy dies, you're in a lot of trouble. This is going to be a really, really hard move to make, and you'll need a lot of support from your back center. So if you made a huge push up the middle, then this guy dies, you're in a lot of trouble because this is really disastrous. However, if you stayed back center, you lose this guy and you make this move here, well, now this guy can filter behind you. So we don't need to be getting into big game plans here, but hopefully there's something you learned here. Again, I'm sorry that I didn't cover this before the first weekend of play, but if you guys have any questions about the layout, join the Discord server. You can ask anybody who's going to be practicing this layout what they think, and people are very willing to share that information. If you want any sort of private lessons on this layout, feel free to DM me on my Discord. On Discord, you'll have to join the server to do so. And what we do is we talk about how your practice went and specific things related to your division. And then we usually schedule a second coaching session, which will go talking more specifically about breakouts. So let me know if you're interested in that. Appreciate you guys watching this video, and I'll see you later.